What's shaking, cats and kittens? Thank you for supporting my podcast and my sustaining partners. I want to tell you about one of them right now, Charmington Holistics. Do you know what an apothecary is? Well, an apothecary makes and provides medicines. Charmington Holistics specializes in all natural herbal remedies and is an apothecary. So, what's ailing you? Can't sleep? Got a stomach ache? Got the blues? Well, head on over to Charmington Holistics where you can find herbal support for anything you need. A personal blended tea, herbal tonic, and supplements can offer you an alternative to that Advil bottle, while an in-house herbalist listens to your needs as well. Charmington Holistics is your source for all things herbal. Head on over to 425 South Conklin Street in Highlandtown or visit Charmington Holistics on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. And Charmington Holistics is open 12 to 5 on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Head on over, check them out, tell them Rob Lee sent you. Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I am interviewing the museum educator with the Office of Historic Alexandria. Please welcome Apasrin. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. It was odd. I was looking at the profile on Instagram, and now that's defunct. We'll just say that's defunct right now.
Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy day. I got hacked. I'm trying not to let it get to me. And
but in that's what that initial point was. And then I started just kind of like typing in like your name, and I was just like, oh, this is just everywhere online. So I want to get those vital stats from you. Can you give us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and some of those early experiences that led you to the work that you're doing today?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in PG County. I was born in Mount Rainier, Maryland. I was raised in a family business. My father, he's from Thailand. And so growing up, he started a business of like antique fine art restoration and conservation. So I was like that. I was there every single day. Like that was very much my life. Just being there in the shop and my whole family, like helping out with that. My mother, she made like plaster reliefs, like of like, like different botanical, like, like these just pretty reliefs that you would like hang on your wall or something. We would go to Eastern Market and like have a little stand and sell out of there. And then, eventually my father, he moved around to different stores in the area. And I just was always there all the time after school, just there till it was time to go home. So I was always, I was brought up around like antiques, old things, publications of old things, so I think that's what kind of sparked my interest in history. But it wasn't until I was getting my my bachelor's degree where I really started to get fascinated with it. I had the chance to work on an exhibit, and creating that exhibit was really, it was fascinating to me. Like creating an exhibit, it kind of blends the history part of it, but also design skills and like that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think I answered your question.
No, thank you. Yeah, I like to just like sit there. Sometimes I'll troll people. I'll give them the deer in the headlights look, and they'll just keep going. It's like, am I giving enough? And I was like, no, you're not. But other times it's just like, oh no, you really want to get the person to ultimately what I try to do here is allow the person to share their story and where they're at, and sometimes they uncover, rediscover, like, damn, I did do that because of that reason.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's like therapy. I'm like going back in time.
So tell me about your work as a museum educator and the Freedom House Museum. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So as a museum educator, work for the Office of Historic Alexandria. Really, that's a collection of different historic sites and museums. One of them is Freedom House Museum. And that site it's been a lot of different things, but it has been essentially a slave pen. It was where people, imprisoned people for domestic slave trade. And that started in 1828. And then the most notorious owners were Franklin and Armfield, and they left the business in 1836. By the start of the Civil War, the business ends, but thousands of people were moved through that site to the Deep South. And really there, we try to talk about the domestic slave trade. People don't really recognize, they know about the transatlantic slave trade, but they don't really fully understand how it worked within the country and how integrated it was with all these other systems, the fabric of society, fabric of our country, what was made off of. So right now the museum is undergoing like renovations and maintenance, and they're doing like historic structures reports and things like that. So in the meantime, we've been working on exhibits. And the exhibit that I'm working on is, it talks about African Americans in Alexandria from, the founding of the city in 1749 to up until like the 1980s. And we talk about the contributions that different African Americans have made. And it's kind of difficult because although we're only highlighting maybe like 10 or 12 people in the exhibit, we're still trying to tell the bigger story in Alexandria and talk about the different important events and time periods and just kind of how that fits into the country's history. So it's been a lot of hard work. I've been working on it for about a year now, and hopefully we will open in April. Sorry, my cat just got in. But yeah, so I'm doing the research for that exhibit. I'm writing the exhibit and then also creating the exhibit. So working with different artifacts and trying to, get them all together and ready for display.
That's great. And I think with, just not being a lot of information out there as to what happened here, to your point, like we'll know about the transatlantic, but we won't know about the domestic component. And I think sometimes we don't want to know about that because it kind of shows that like reflection of, no, this was very much an American thing. This was very much a thing that is rooted into what this country was about. And there's still remnants and repercussions of what that is in this country now. So being able to kind of tell that, I think, and speak to some of that stuff that has happened, and also speak on like famous like residents or people who've contributed that are in Alexandria or from Alexandria that contributed to just where we're at outside of that component of the slave trade. It shows like, okay, here's the history, what it is, warts and all, tell what it is, as opposed to let's sanitize this and let's make this something that it's not. Because like you can look back at maybe something 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you're like, I lived that. That's not what happened. So going back even further and with some of the history and stuff that you're researching and writing and helping to put out there and produce, I would imagine that some people are like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, no, your family is a part of this actually.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions that people, when the museum was open, it was open and then we closed for a period of time. But when people were coming in, I was talking to visitors, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I mean, people are like, oh, are these African Americans, are they coming from Africa? Are they coming? I'm like, no. These are people that lived.
Yes.
That lived in DC and Maryland. They lived in the area. Like they were born here. Their parents were born here. This isn't, not that the transatlantic slave trade isn't, a story to be told in itself, but it's like, these are two different things. And not a lot of people understand that. Like, no, this is a very different story that's not taught in middle school and high school. Like no one ever really talks about this.
And that's, like I said, is super important. And it also brings up questions and leads to discourse on, quote unquote, we value this concept of we're American. And it's like, well, these people are American. We're American, and this still happened here, and it speaks on the classism and the different things that we do in this country.
Yeah.
So I read that you partnered with the Northern Virginia Community College art students and community artists to create portraits of historical figures. Describe that experience.
Yeah. So I contacted one of the like head art professors, instructors at Nova at
Hmm.
the Alexandria campus, and her name is Stacy Slayton, and she was very responsive to this idea, and she was very collaborative from the beginning. So she had an advanced painting class that she thought would fit perfectly for the project, and so she, I would pass her along materials for the exhibit so she could present them to her class. So her students were learning about the history as they selected individuals to paint. And
Sure.
so we're almost done. I'm just waiting on like a few more students to contribute, to finish their paintings. And then when the exhibit's ready, they're going to be, their work is going to be hung on display. And it's interesting because these students all have different like aspirations and backgrounds. Like some of them want to be journalists and, took painting to, I guess, help that accentuate what they wanted to do with journalism. Some of them want to become art teachers. Some of them, they all have different backgrounds. And so it's just been really fascinating working with them. And also, creating an exhibit where we really are collaborating with the community. I think there's a lot of problems with museums where we don't really work with people to create history. Instead, we're kind of just like telling it and what it is. And it should be more collaborative because these people are a part of history. This affects them. This is, their interpretation matters. So it's just been really interesting. And I'm grateful for being able to like work with these students and Nova too.
It's great. And I like what you said there about the community being involved in that collaboration. That's important. And I hear about it all the time, how things that go on within that art community. It's like, you guys are representing us in theory, but it's hard to get access. It's that gatekeeper thing. And it seems like you're doing the opposite there. So that's great to hear, especially with younger artists too, because it's not like, oh yeah, we have this tenured. It's like, no, we have artists that are at different stages, emerging artists and so on. And really, this could be something that really changes where they're going at and changes the direction of who can see it.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's exactly what I'm hoping for is, I'm a master's student in a public history program at American University. And, we talk about these inequities in the museums and in the history field, but it's, you could talk about it all you want, but we need to actually put it into action and actually be about it. So I was just very like adamant to like, when I was given this opportunity to work on the exhibit, I was like, no, I'm actually going to like try to do something.
Yeah, that's I think a lot of times people deal in concepts instead of something that looks like a change. And we see it like right now, right? Where we have these like grand ideas of let's fix this, let's fix X or what have you. And then people are sitting there talking and it's just a means to procrastinate instead of just let's do it. And then if we mess it up, we could beg for forgiveness later, but at least we tried something. And I realize as I've gotten older that I appreciate that one versus just let me just keep measuring. We don't know what's going to happen and nothing gets done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a museum educator, how do you stay up to date? Where do you like fit in with the scope of like, how do you stay up to date and figure out what fits into the scope of the museum and to which degree are you involved with the curation process? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So this is a good subject to talk about. So as a museum educator, typically I would help with like creating programs and teaching school children and giving tours and kind of like assisting maybe with some projects, with some research here and there. So this was, I think it was because of the pandemic, really, I guess my department just tried to try to do things differently and give educators different responsibilities. So I'm definitely the one that's like always wants to do more. Like I'm always asking for more. Like, let me work on this. Let me work on that. I want to do that. And so I've always been really interested with the Freedom House Museum and African American history in general in Alexandria. So I don't think typically, I think a curator would generally be doing the work that I'm doing. So I'm kind of like aspiring to be a curator, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just hoping I do a good job with this exhibit. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. You're on your way. You're on your way. Because I'm listening. I was like, no, you're doing it.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So I got two more questions before I get into my rapid fire questions.
Okay.
The rapid fire ones you should be afraid of. They're very scary.
Okay.
So can you share some of your influences or what have you? And are there any specific works from visual art, documentary, film, or music that you find specifically important? It might be, you know what, I like the way that this person did this, or I like the way this exhibit was set up. What are some of those influences that really pop for you, and why do they pop for you?
I've growing up, in the DC area, I've always gone to a lot of the museums that we have here. So I would say I can't really think, because of the pandemic and everything, I haven't really been in a museum lately. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of hard. I feel like if things were, how they were, I usually take my kids to museums a couple times every month. So I haven't been to one in so long. I like to just be in art and history museums and just take in visually how they are organizing everything, how they're presenting things to the public. And I can't think of one particular. Probably the last museum I've been to was National Museum of Women in the Arts. Okay. Man, I feel stuck with this question. I think it's just a culmination of the different exhibits I've been to.
And that's great. I think sometimes that question does trip people up, because sometimes I get really interesting, broad answers. It's yeah, I really like the way that this dude plays this guitar. It makes me a better visual artist. So it's how do those connect? And then they break it down.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting to see really what a person brings in. Sometimes I look at restaurant menus, and I'm oh, you guys are nerds. And I'm oh, this is great. It's one place here in Baltimore that they have drinks on the menu, but they have wrestling references, wrestling finishing moves as references for the drinks.
Oh,
and I'm okay, wow. You guys are great.
That's
this is
really
amazing.
Cool.
So I was now I'm going to drink this all the time. This is wonderful.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. I don't know. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to get back to you on that question.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. So this is the last question I have, and not the least by any stretch. Tell me about the oral history project, and what initially attracted you to working on this project. And I got a few sub questions, but I want to at least start off and give you a chance to speak on that.
Yeah. So it's very different, focusing, switching to psilocybin to mushrooms. It's so different than the work that I've been doing. But I think, okay, so I'm just going to say it, I use psilocybin, I've used magic mushrooms, and they've been wonderful. I definitely don't use them regularly, Mm-hmm. I use them when I feel like I should, when there's a moment in my life where I need to figure something out, or, I'll be honest, I've had 2 kids. I have a 2-year-old. So I definitely went through postpartum depression, and psilocybin helped me kind of work on things, and get back to how I was feeling, more of my normal self. And, I think it was during the pandemic when we still are in the pandemic, but, when we were staying at home, we weren't leaving. And I took some magic mushrooms, and the idea came to me, and I really don't understand exactly how it came, but it came to me to do this project. And I wanted to combine my experience with oral history, because I've done oral histories, and I just thought, I'm tired of hearing about magic mushrooms and psilocybin from, these elite individuals, whether they be like scientists or politicians or, the experts in the field who are usually white men. And I just thought, I want to hear like real experiences from people, and I want to give them the opportunity to share those stories, because right now this is a pretty pivotal moment where entheogenics and different psychedelics and different plant and fungi medicines, they're becoming decriminalized, becoming accessible, or we're trying to make them more accessible for their medicinal benefits. And the people that they're affecting are everyday common people, and we don't get to really hear from them. And from the historical standpoint, like I want, in the future for people to be able to look back and actually study this moment in time and like really understand how it came about and what the experiences of people were like. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No. And so in that, there's this one sub question I have in it, because you actually in that answered two of, because I had like 4 questions related to that, and you answered 2 other ones in there, so I only got 1 left with it. And so what are some of the most interesting things that you've learned, like during the process of doing the research and working on this? And also, I think that they're more connected, at least the way that you're describing it so far, more connected to how you approach your day job to this project. They seem very connected. The way you described them, I was like, oh, I'm interested. Tell me more. Where are my magic mushrooms?
Yeah, well, I think, there is that whole stigma with magic mushrooms, with psilocybin, that, it's like, I don't know, it's like a bad drug, and you're going to get addicted, and your life is going to fall apart, and you're not going to be able to like function in society and think clearly. And that's like quite the opposite. And I knew that was true with me. I'm like, oh, well, I'm not, like, I'm still doing my thing. And like, I'm still together. And the more I talk to people that I don't know, that aren't my friends that I'm meeting through the project, I'm like, no, these people are really fascinating and interesting and intellectual and smart and creative. So I've just been learning that like this whole perception of psilocybin and other psychedelics of being like bad, demonic, horrible things that's going to like cause havoc in society is completely wrong. And that actually has a long history dating back to, war on poverty, war on drugs, war on crime, where we've kind of constructed this like reality of these plant and fungi medicines as being horrible. But that's like a whole nother topic to get into. But that's the biggest thing, is just like, I went into this project wanting to see, is there a community of psilocybin users in DC, and community is such a broad term. I didn't want to just blanket that and, say there's a community when there's not. So I really went into this project with the question of, is there a community? What does that look like? Who are these people? And I'm still doing the work. I'm still coming to like realizations after every interview that I have. But there's a lot of different types of people. I'm talking to medical professionals. I'm talking to artists. I'm talking to parents, and just different professionals and people with different backgrounds.
It's great. You have my interest. I'm looking forward to that question from earlier, and the latest on the oral history project. I'm looking forward to it. Put me on your mailing list or whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because but you're right. I've had people come to me that are using psilocybin, and they enjoy it. They tell me about just their experiences creatively, right? And I would tell them about just different spots where I'm at and kind of how I'm feeling and so on. Especially when it comes to, as I was describing to you, how many recordings I might do in a day. And sometimes it's a drag, and you have these ups and downs, and you're like, oh, you ever do any mushrooms, man? Just hang in the woods. I was like, can you ask that differently? And it gives me that vibe where, and this is just my standpoint, but it gives me that vibe where the people that are up there, these austere, these very refined folks that are representative or supposed to be representative to speak on this topic, they have a certain interest. It's like, oh, well, people that do this, these are bad people. It's like the reefer madness thing. And it's just like, but now you see like tech bros, white dudes out there selling like weed, and it's fine, and we don't care. It's an industry. I can trade on it and all of that stuff. And it's like, until you guys find a way to make money off of it, it's bad. It's immoral or what have you.
Yeah, exactly. I think, it's definitely all about capitalism at the end. That's the answer to everything, I guess.
This communism podcast is brought to you by now. So I got a few questions, a few rapid fire questions for you, but thanks for telling me about the Oral History Project. I'm looking forward to the next steps on that. And there's nothing to worry about here with these rapid fire questions. They're great. So there are 4 questions here. You don't have to provide any extra context unless you really think it's necessary.
Okay.
All right. First one, outside of work, when do you talk about like history? Do you get into like those kind of history debates with like friends? Like, I think the Revolutionary War started here. This is what really happened. When do you get into those conversations?
Yeah. With my partner, he probably gets annoyed by it though. So I'm probably just talking to myself at some point. It starts off as a debate and then I'm just like rambling on and he's like, doing his own thing. I'm just still like talking about it. With my sister, she's really into history too. So I can really, but things like we fight a lot. So it can get like pretty like heated and we'll have to like, I don't know, we'll have to take a break or like, I'll end it before it gets too serious and we start fighting or something. But also in school, I'm a master's student. So of course, like my whole life is filled with history from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. I'm just always reading and talking about it and researching and writing it. But yeah,
well, you guys are having like adult kind of like intellectual like arguments or what have you in debates. My brother and I are debating over like cheeseburgers. It's like, you know what? This is bullshit. This one is better. That's what we do. That's what we do. It's just we're lowbrow when it comes to our food choices, but we're very protective of them. Oh yeah,
no, that happens too. Don't worry.
Now this one is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I don't think it's going to be too bad. Okay. I miss traveling, and I tend to do it vicariously, right? Do you have a favorite location that you've traveled to? Like, not necessarily recently per se, but just in life. That's like, this sticks out. This was great.
Yeah, like in my dreams, I think I don't travel. I've never really traveled that much.
Really?
I lived in California and San Diego for a short amount of time, and I'll just say that was my traveling experience. I don't really travel much. I don't. I want to. So that's why I say I dream about it. Like I really want to go to Europe. I want to go to Thailand, where that's like my heritage, and I've never been to Thailand before. So I'll just say California for now because I really loved it, and I love the West Coast.
I'm planning a little trip out there too. So I'm looking for the spots. I need to get something from In-N-Out, animal style. I need to get really loose. So let's do that.
Yeah. Oh, In-N-Out. I miss In-N-Out. Oh yeah. Okay. Now all these memories are flooding.
Taste bud memories. And it always goes back to burgers. It always goes back to burgers for me.
Well, no, it's like the burrito. It's a breakfast burrito for me. I remember I used to get one like every single day, and really unhealthy. Time in my life.
The only thing that sucked out there, I'm a sushi snob, and it's this place here that they're always making rolls, and I come in there, I'll just like eat like 9 rolls, and like sushi monsters here again. And I went there into Little Tokyo, and I had a very, as I called it, my Japanese long weekend. I went to see Japanese wrestling, hung out Little Tokyo, had sushi, bought a bunch of wild stuff. It was great.
That sounds really fun.
It was a lot of fun, and that was my first time going to Cali, by the way. So it was just like and it was the Anime Expo too, all in that same weekend.
Oh my gosh.
So it was great. And the only thing that sucked about it was the sushi was not on point.
In California?
I don't know what happened. Maybe I went to the wrong place. I had a bento box later that kind of redeemed it, but that first sushi experience was not good.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Every time I had sushi, that's where I like started loving sushi. And so that sucks. You have to go back. You have to.
Sushi is great. Give me like a volcano roll or something, like something that's like kind of fried and it's got like smoked salmon in there.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I was definitely afraid. I definitely like stuck to like California roll. Like I didn't eat any raw fish at first, and then I probably had some sake, like a sake bomb, and then I like expanded my horizons.
Yeah. So I got two more. What other talent would you most like to have?
I wish I could play an instrument. I wish I could. I like, that's, you know, to go back to mushrooms, like that's why I feel like mushrooms is my calling. Like psilocybin, this was a calling for me because I'm not good at anything. I'm like, I've tried so many different hobbies and I suck. So like, that's why I'm like, I'm actually good at mushrooms. Like this is my thing. But so yeah, a musical instrument. I would want to be a musician. I'd probably start off with like the guitar or maybe the piano. I've always like pretended, like I've always like just picked up instruments. I'm like, oh yeah, like I know what I'm doing, and it sounds horrible, but in my head, I'm like really good.
I because I'm like, you can't probably tell because I'm 6'4", right? I want to play a double bass. I just want to like have one of those really tall like basses, just like, you know.
Oh, that's so cool.
But then be very charismatic, like a lead singer with it. It's like, you're a bassist. It's like, look, I am the bassist, firstly.
Wait, do you know how to play any instruments?
I am less talented than I look. No, I don't play anything. You said you're not good at anything. I suck at everything, even this. Lastly, this is the last question I got. And maybe this ties back to the psilocybin, but when do you feel your freest?
My freest? Definitely when I'm away from my kids. It's like, that's horrible. No, my freest, that's a good question. And I think it would have to do with psilocybin. And it's probably those times, because like I microdose too. Probably like in between like a microdose and a full dose, where it's like, you know, I'm just like vibing in my home, just relaxing. I'm just like listening to music and just thinking about life. I think that's really where I feel the most free. Yeah.
Just wait for it. I'm gonna ask for that psilocybin playlist.
Yeah, I've been working on one. So yeah.
That'd be great.
And that could, I guess, go back to that question you had about my influences, but it's probably has to do a lot with music, I think. So,
okay. So now, since you threw that in,
I know, I just set myself up with that.
So you did. So what is the, what are you regularly listening to? Is that a particular artist, particular genre? What are you usually listening to? I'm
all over the place. I've been listening to a lot of A$AP Rocky. And then I also like Tori Moi. Tori Moi. I like who else? Then I was listening to a lot of like The Killers lately. I don't know why. I've just been listening to them.
Jenny was a friend of mine, man.
Huh?
Jenny was a friend of mine.
Yeah. Oh, man. I don't know. I think I'm kind of like all over the place.
You have very similar musical taste to me, because I'm looking at my Toro album right now that's on my record player, and my birthday was a couple weeks ago, and my partner, she got me the Live from Trauma like records, like a double record, and I haven't opened it yet. I was like, I'm gonna blast this later. This is gonna be great.
Man, that sounds so fun. Wow.
I got to see him one time live at the 930 Club, and this was my third time trying to see him do his thing or what have you. I was there one of the previous two times, and I had a panic attack, and I just had to leave. I was like, I'm not feeling well. I'm just going to go home. So I missed him, right? And then she knew that, and she was like, oh, I got his tickets to the 930 Club. I was like, what's happening there? And she was like, we're going to see Toro. I was like,
oh my God.
this is before the last album came out, so I was just like, hell yeah. And that album happened to be released on my birthday, so I got a preview of the album. And it was really good. It was really rad.
Wow, that sounds like so much fun. I've also seen him live. He's a really great performer.
Yes.
And I definitely was a fan. I like waited until after the show. I hung around and I was just waiting there for probably 30 minutes by myself. I'm gonna meet him. I want to. Yeah, but he's
hi, I'm Apasrin.
I'm a really big fan. Can I touch your mic or something? I don't know. I was probably really dorky. I get really nervous. Probably said something stupid, but whatever. He's cool. Also, Little Dragon. I've been listening to a lot of Little Dragon too.
You see, like I said, same taste.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I want to thank you for being on the podcast, and I want to invite you to let the fine folks know where to check you out, more of your work, some updates on the oral history and so on.
Yeah. So, my Instagram got hacked, so I can't give you my personal account, but I made an account for the Oral History Project. It's called Blue Mycelia. So Blue, and then Mycelia is Mycelia. And so there, I'm horrible with social media, but I'm trying to give updates about the different interviews that I do and the different materials that I'm reading. I try to share knowledge, and you can just stay up to date. Hopefully I'll make a website one of these days.
So there you have it, folks. Again, I want to thank you, Apasrin, for coming on to the podcast. So for Apasrin, this is Rob Lee saying that there is art in and around your city. You just got to look for it.